It doesn't matter if your days are long.
Sing!
It doesn't matter if your night's gone wrong.
Sing!
Get up and stomp your feet and sing it. Oh, it doesn't matter if he let you go.
Sing!
It doesn't matter if he hurt you slow.
Sing!
Get up and dance, just feel that beat and sing it. Oh, I don't know what you've been told, but music makes you lose control. Sing, 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 sing it out as hard as you can. Make them hear you from LA to Japan. Don't let them bring you down. This is how we do it now. Go and roll the windows down and sing, 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 sing it with your hands in the sky. Light it up like it's the 4th of July. Don't let them bring you down. You know what I'm talking about. A little bit louder now.
It doesn't matter if you're way off track.
Sing, feel like you're headed for a heart attack.
Sing!
Just raise your voice and bring the noise and sing it. Sing for your mama, sing for your daughter, sing for your sisters, Mr. Best Friends, brother, cause I don't know what you've been told, but music makes you lose control. Sing, 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 sing it out as hard as you can. Make them hear you from LA to Japan. Don't let them bring you down. This is how we do it now. Go and roll the windows down. Sing, 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 sing it with your hands in the sky. Light it up like it's the 4th of July. Don't let them bring you down. You know what I'm talking about. A little bit louder now.
Sing it for your mama, ayy. Sing it for your papa, ayy. Sing it for the whole world, for the boy or girl, for your number one fan. KO on the beat, okay. I'm a human, ain't no way. Go ahead and sing it, don't stop, cause the beat won't stop. No, wait.
Sing, 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 sing it out as hard as you can. Make them hear you from LA to Japan. Don't let them bring you down. This is how we do it now. Go and roll the windows down and sing, 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 sing it with your hands in the sky. Light it up like it's the 4th of July. Don't let them bring you down. You know what I'm talking about. A little bit louder now. You know what I'm talking about. Sing a little bit louder now. Sing. You know what I'm talking about. A little bit louder now. You know what I'm talking about. Sing a little bit louder now. Sing. Who run this mother? Oh, who run this mother? it's all around, no hope that I could fly. Then I sing along, then I sing along, then I sing along. I got all I need when I got you and I, 'cause I look around me and see a sweet life. I'm stuck in the dark, but you're my flashlight. You're getting me through the night. You kickstart my heart when you shine it in my eyes. I can't lie, it's a sweet life. I'm stuck in the dark, but you're my flashlight. You're getting me through the night. Oh, you're getting me through the night. You're getting me through the night. I got you and I. Stick around me, your sweet light. Stuck in the dark, but you're my flashlight. You're getting me through the night. You're getting me through the night. 'Cause you're my flashlight. You're my flashlight. You're getting me through the night. 'Cause you're my flashlight. You're my flashlight. You're getting me through the night.
Buddy, you're a boy, make a big noise, playing in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got blood on your face, you big disgrace, kicking your can all over the place, singing, we will rock you. We will rock you. Buddy, you're a young man, hard man, shouting in the street, gonna take on the world someday. Got blood on your face, you big disgrace, waving your banner all over the place, singing, we will rock you. We will rock you. We will rock you. Another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. And another one gone, and another one gone. Another one bites the dust. And another one gone, and another one bites the dust. Hey, I'm gonna get you too. Another one bites the dust. 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 We are the champions, my friends, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the world. I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening me. Galileo, Figaro. Oh, I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. He's just a poor boy from a poor family, spared in his life from this monstrosity. Easy come, easy go, will you let let me go. Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. Bismillah, we will not let you go. Bismillah, we will not let you go. Will not let you go. Will not let you go. Let me go. No, 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 no. Mamma mia, mamma mia, mamma mia, let me go. Beelzebub has the devil put aside for me, for me, for me. So you think you can stone me and spin my eye? So you think you can love me and leave me to die? Oh, baby, can't do this to me, baby. Just gotta get out, just gotta get right out of here. We are the champions, my friend, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions, we are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the world, of the world.
Good morning, ACCA. My name is Kimba Chambers, and I am this year's president of the Alabama Community College Association. On behalf of the 2017 ACCA Executive Committee, I would like to welcome each of you to the 2017 Alabama Community College Association Conference. Let me begin by thanking the Sun Chief Sound from Coastal Alabama Community College under the direction of Rebecca Berry, Lauren Smith, David Ayers, and Buddy Brock for their beautiful performance. Thank you, Dr. Gary Branch, for allowing your students to amaze us with their talents. Let's please give them a round of applause. This year's conference theme, ACCS, Impacting Alabama's Future, will center around the abundant contributions and great accomplishments that our system provides for the state of Alabama. Last year, we told our story, and this year we will continue to tell our story through our system college employees, students, business and industry, workforce, and surrounding communities. For the past year, the ACCA Executive Committee has planned an exciting conference for you, filled with professional development opportunities, renowned speakers, entertainment, and collaboration. Whether you are here to meet some of your colleagues from other institutions that you haven't seen since last year's conference, or attend a coworker session because they told you you better attend, or listen to our intriguing keynote speakers, or just because you came back to see if we were bringing back the ACCA dance. We are pleased you have chosen to join with us and look forward to a great conference. At this time, please stand and join me for the presentation of colors by the Marion Military Institute Army ROTC Color Guard, followed by Ms. Christina Mims, who will sing the national anthem. You may be seated. Please join me in thanking Marion Military Institute, Army ROTC Color Guard, and Ms. Mims for their stunning performance. Thank you. Now I will introduce our stage guests. To my immediate right is Dr. Martha Cantor, our keynote speaker, who will be introduced formally later. To her right is Mr. Matt Caffrey, Director of Engagement and Advocacy with College Promise Campaign. To his right is President Sam Munderland of Trenton State Community College. To my left is Mr. Russell Houghton, First Vice President, President-elect of ACCA and Associate Dean of Institutional Effectiveness and Research at Bevel State Community College. And to his left is Dr. Victoria Perry, Second Vice President of ACCA and Counselor within the Division of Student Development Services at Bishop State Community College. Please help me welcome our platform guests. We thank you for your presence here today and for your support for the Alabama Community College Association. Now I will ask President Sam Munderland to come forward and bring greetings.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you. We're all in our places with bright, shiny faces. This is the way we start our new day. Good morning. Thank you all for coming and joining us here today. We're pleased to be able to welcome those of you that have been with us for quite some time, as well as those of you who are new to the Alabama Community College system. This is shaping up to be a dynamic conference, and we are proud to be able to host it today here in the great city of Montgomery, Alabama. Just before we get started, let us express our gratitude to all of you who so generously helped to make this event come together smoothly. Dr. Kimber Chambers, the Executive Committee, the Chancellor's Office, sponsors, our vendors, volunteers, and last but not least, our student ambassadors. We couldn't have done it without you. You have all chosen to be a part of this association because of your passion for student success. Your passions help all of us to come together as one, and the energy we create as one allows us to achieve our individual as well as our group goals. During the next several days, you will be getting to know more about different initiatives through our planned activities and special sessions, where you will be joined in and get your very own hands-on experiences. I hope that these will prove to be memorable and fulfilling for you. These, of course, are not only the things that are important, or not all of the things that are important to us. You will also meet lots of new people and make new friends along the way. Here at the Alabama Community College System Conference, we value and cherish the friendships we make, as they more often than not prove to be formed on a strong common ground, which in turn makes them last for many, many years to come. So a very heartfelt welcome to all of you.
Thank you, President Munderland. We appreciate your warm greetings and welcome each of you to the city of Montgomery. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Houghton to come forward to introduce today's keynote speaker.
Good morning. Dr. Martha Cantor leads the nation's College Promise campaign, an initiative to build broad public support for funding the first 2 years of higher education starting in America's community colleges. This initiative is focused on improving college access, affordability, quality, and completion for hardworking students. Dr. Cantor is also a senior fellow and New York University's Steinhardt Institute of Higher Education Policy, where she specializes in policy efforts to identify education interventions, financing models, and behavioral incentives at the local, state, and national levels to raise high school and college graduation rates in America. In 2009, President Barack Obama nominated Dr. Cantor to serve as the U.S. Undersecretary of Education, where she served as the first community college leader to serve in this position. While in this role, she had oversight responsibility for all policies, programs, and activities related to post-secondary education, adult and career technical education, federal student aid, along with 6 other White House initiatives. While serving under U.S. Education Secretary Arne Duncan, Dr. Cantor and her team worked to implement President Barack Obama's goal to have the best educated, most competitive workforce in the world by 2020. During her tenure, Dr. Cantor oversaw the successful implementation of the Direct Student Loan Program, along with an increased growth in the number of Pell Grant recipients. This resulted in a 50% increase in college enrollment for low-income students. Previously, Dr. Cantor served as president of De Anza College and then chancellor for Foothills De Anza Community College District, one of the nation's largest community college, for 16 years. She began her career as an alternative high school education teacher. She holds a bachelor's in sociology from Brandeis University, a master's in education from Harvard University, and a doctorate in organization and leadership from the University of San Francisco. Please help me in welcome to the podium Dr. Martha Cantor.
Thank you. Can I take down this, just put this here?
Yes.
I think I'm just gonna talk here so you can see me a little bit better. I have the technology, so hopefully we've got the slides working. I have to press it. Ah, there we are. Okay, I don't know if he did it or I did it, but I wanted to kick off my remarks by talking about a student, and I've called my time with you this morning Community College Pathways to Alabama's Future. And I used the word future because I've been in this work a long time, and I'm committed to see our nation, as President Obama said early on, having the best educated, most competitive workforce in the world, and it is very hard work. And so I know each of you in the audience, whether you are a staff member, a faculty, a president, a trustee, a community member, all of us together are going to make this happen, and we have to do it together. I think in the past we've been very siloed. When I look back on my history, I say, oh, I should have reached out to the Rotary Club. I should have reached out more to business leaders. I should have reached out to the mayor and spent more time locally figuring out what is the next phase of our work. So I want to share some of these lessons with you, and they really lead to why I really am working full-time on this campaign. Because I think without understanding that students will need more than a high school diploma for success in the 21st century, we will not reach these goals. And so I'd like to see it before, as soon as possible, and I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm concerned about 2020. That was really the message I wanted to carry, that by 2020, we would have everyone working in this country who wanted to work, and we would have a much better life for everyone in this country. So whenever that happens, that is why I think so many of us do this work in the community colleges and in the university system, because we've got to have systems that really focus on what I say, the top 100% of people in this country, not just the top 5% or 10%. And so when I think of lifting the country, I think, how can we lift everyone forward to do better? So I want to just give 2 points before I'll go into some slides that I've hopefully will work. The first is I want to recognize the Shoals Dollar Scholars, because really, when you look back, and you can take a look in Alabama at their website, when you look back to 2011, now 6 years ago, It was a very small group of people led by the education leaders in the community college, the Northwest Shoals Community College. It was 2 Rotary clubs, the Florence and Sheffield Rotary Clubs. It was the government, the local government. It was the business leaders, and it was the families that said, we understand that we want our students to go beyond high school. And so when I look across the country and I think about Shoals, I think, okay, here we are with about 20 million students, plus or minus, in every college or university in the country. And guess what? Almost half of them are in a community college. So this is the gateway to the future. And, you know, in our mission, we say we're starting in America's community college. We're not limiting students' aspirations. If they can go all the way up, that's what we need, that's what we want. But when I think about it, I think education starts at birth, and it should go through life. And so our role in the community colleges is critically important. And I just want to recognize that this little community in Shoals is giving, you know, the promise, the aspiration, the support for every student that meets the eligibility criteria to get a 1-year certificate, a 2-year degree, and to further their education beyond the community college. So I just want to congratulate you for that, and to say that this can happen locally, it can happen statewide, and it can happen nationally. We pay for what we value, and if we have the will to make these kinds of things happen, they will happen. The second thing I wanted to share was a quick story about Charles Lee. And I'm really pleased that, you know, this morning we've got Dr. Steve Katsinas in the audience. Steve runs the Education Policy Center at the University of Alabama. And it's been our Matt Caffrey, who you'll hear from in a little bit, and my pleasure to get to know Steve and to get to know the graduate students and the undergraduates that he works with in the Policy Center to study things like the Pell Grant. Because college opportunity is simply not possible for the top 100% without the Pell Grant. The Pell Grant is foundational for opportunity. So I'm really thrilled that Steve and his team and so many other partners that he had really were able to make a convincing case to Senator Shelby, Senator Cochran, all of the power brokers in Washington, D.C. to say, we need summer Pell back for our students. Because when you think of education, we all have to think of this as year-round and lifelong. If you don't remember anything else from me about the college promise, we need to have education being year-round for our students. We need to have it financially available and affordable for them. And we need to think of it in the long term. We can't just think of it day to day. So when I think of Steve and my relationship with the University of Alabama Policy Center, I was fortunate this fall to have Charles Lee come and join us as a fellow at the College Promise Campaign in Washington, D.C. And guess what? Charles is a graduate, is a transfer student from Marion Military Institute. And guess what? He is finishing his senior year at the University of Alabama. And further, we were very fortunate to be able to have a link at Forbes magazine for student stories. And Matt will talk a little bit about that when he comes up toward the end. But the story of Charles is a remarkable one, because here is a student who in his entire family struggled with housing, struggled with food, struggled with money, struggled with drug addiction, struggled with divorce, and the list goes on. And he has a very large family, sisters and brothers, and he is making it through to be a senior at the University of Alabama. And that would not have been possible if he had not gone from high school to the community college to be doing the work with us this semester. He's going to go off and graduate and go to law school. And this is the kind of promise that we all are doing this work for. So I just want to recognize, if you want to read his story, he calls it the underpinning success of so many Americans, and trying to make the story really better known for everyone in the country, because sharing his story shares our story of our country. And this is why we have so much passion in the work that we do. And if you go to collegepromise.org, we have his story out there. We have our annual report that you can see lots of student stories out there. And we need to tell that story through the voices of our students, through the business leaders, through everyone that understands how important the work you do is. So my next slide, hopefully this will work. Let's see. Yes. How many people know what that machine is on the left-hand side? If you know, I'm going to give you a chance to stand up in the audience if you actually know what it is. Stand up for just a second, take a break. All right. So I would say half of the audience. This is. I'm glad you got a chance to stretch after that great breakfast, and the student voices, which were so powerful. Well, it's a mimeograph machine. And you know, when I was a teacher in the 60s and 70s, actually even earlier than that a little bit, this was how we made our lesson plans. We rolled up this horribly smelling ink. We got it all over ourselves. We brought our lesson plans into our classes. It helped keep us on track. And that is the thing of the past that most of my audiences, it's about 20%. And it's an age definer. So those of you who stood up really understand what, you know, the changes that education has been through over the 50, 60 years of the Mimeo machines. Those didn't even exist in the 1920s. And, you know, I put Bob Dylan on the right because I think he said it really well for our generation, my generation, which is, you know, the times they really are a-changing. And we're at a time now, as I learned from the Policy Center and the research that we do, where we have seen divestment in public higher education, divestment in community colleges. And we're really concerned about that, which is another reason why the campaign is so important, because we need to build public understanding, to build will, to make the case that this is an investment in America's future that is going to yield graduates like Charles Lee that I mentioned. Hundreds and hundreds and thousands of graduates that our country is going to need for success in the 21st century. So we need to acknowledge the changes that we've seen. And people say, oh, you're the free college lady. And I say, well, you know what? This is not something new. This is not something. President Obama certainly put a stake in the ground for it. He said we ought to really push ourselves to figure out the financing of this. But I looked back in the history, and I looked at, you know, one of the early public colleges in America, Baruch College, which is part of the City University of New York today, and the Rice Institute, which became Rice University. And guess what? That was in the 1800s, the late 1800s, where college was virtually free. And when we went forward and we made the GI Bill available to every returning veteran in 1954, that was another place where the country put a stake in the ground to say, we want a more educated society. Veterans have served. They have earned the right to have the access to a free and appropriate college education. So when I think about going forward and I think about what we've been through in the last 40, 50 years, you know, we've lived through war. We've lived through the growth of state and federal accountability. We were talking about accreditation last night and how complex that's become. We've been through every decade. I look back and I say, this is my 5th recession. Why haven't we saved for a rainy day? Why am I cutting my community college budget? Why didn't the state, why didn't we do a better job planning for the future? We spend as we go. It's a real problem. And we've had dramatic expansion. We have never seen the kind of diversity this country has seen today. But all of this has really led to big looming questions that we have. What is the public purpose of what we do? Not just public education, not just private education, but why does education matter in the most fundamental sense? And what is the investment we need to make those outcomes all that we want? We don't want to lose all these students along the way. We know from the research, they need counseling, they need advising, they need mentoring, and thank you, those in the audience who do that work, because our students need not only high quality instruction, but they need student support. My colleague Joe May, who runs the Dallas County Community College District, put a food bank on every campus. He talked with the mayor. The mayor put transportation vouchers for every low-income student. In fact, I think it's for all students in the community college district there. So it can be done, and these are examples, small examples, but we're tracking all of them around the country to say, this is how local communities can do this work. And we've got to stop the questioning. We've got to show the results. So that is really what we try to do, because we've got to strengthen the national understanding, in our view, that community colleges are critical for America's future, and we need to have a growth opportunity for that. This slide didn't come out that well, I apologize, but this is a slide that I think this audience knows really well. Our diversity is growing. We have so many different populations, and about, as I said, almost half of people are in the community colleges at a time where we have seen that divestment I talked about take place. So this shows you a 10-year span across the country of how state funding declined for public higher education, while the income of families and tuition revenue really did not keep pace. And so my next slide, which is a favorite slide, and by the way, I will tell you these slides, Dr. Chambers, I'm really thrilled to be here and can't say enough great things about Dr. Chambers, but she has all these slides, and we will make them available to anyone that wants to use them as you make your case in your local community to really address student needs. And this is one of sort of the most compelling slides that shows you over 30 years, the blue line is what's happened to family income, and the other lines going up are what has happened to the rising costs of education. So we haven't done that either. We don't have enough students earning the kind of money in the high-paying jobs that they need to make ends meet, and college costs have escalated over those many years. So we've got huge, huge challenges. And it comes from me down to 3 or 4 challenges that I think we all face that I know you're doing a lot to curb. The first one is about our workforce gap. So when you make the case about why we want to invest in helping every student go beyond high school, and that can be a disconnected adult, it can be a mother who raised kids that never got the opportunity. Our average age in community colleges is 28, but we think of it as 18-year-olds. It's not that anymore, and so anytime you can underscore that, many people, because if they got an education, think the age is just youth to college, and that really is not the case at all, and we're really happy at the campaign to be tracking adult promise investments as well as youth to college. So Shoals is really looking at the example I gave, looking at youth to college, but sooner or later they may go the route that Vance Guarantee has done in North Carolina, or that any number of adult promise programs have done in the country, in Tennessee, putting in an adult component, because it's adults and youth we need to educate. There are so many adults got a little bit of college, went a little bit after high school, couldn't make ends meet, didn't know a Pell Grant was available, all kinds of reasons why they stopped out. I don't even call them dropouts. I just look at this lifelong trajectory and I say they have stopped out for a very good reason, and we need to get them back in as well. And so when I show this slide is we have this for every single state, where the workforce gaps are in the high demand fields, in tech, in healthcare, in business, in manufacturing, and so glad to see Mercedes here. I think the Mercedes plants and so much of manufacturing, call centers, other things coming back. I learned that Google has a new plant here, operations plant in Alabama. These are the kinds of jobs we're going to need to really propel the country forward, and I think you can make the case. These are your graduates. This is what they're prepared for, but I think the ask has to be to couple that. Can they get paid internships while they're working? These community colleges students are working anyway. Let's get them work beyond entry level. Let's get them work that's laddered up, and I think we just don't often ask enough. And we don't have enough of the strategy that's shared among the community colleges to say to these business leaders, this is the plan forward. This is how you can participate in getting a promise in your community. You can participate in a paid internship for students. You can start them in high school, even earlier if you want. It can go through middle school, high school, community college, and so forth. But all the studies I've read show that the majority of community college students have to work to go to school. And I don't think we've done enough really thinking through the kinds of roles that the business leaders in our community could play. We've got a completion problem. I'm not going to dwell on a lot of that, but I called this speech Pathways because we've got to get more students finishing what they start. It might just be a few courses that they take at the beginning. Summer Pell is going to let them take more courses. We're doing a paper. Alabama belongs to Complete College America in the country. It's focused on completion. We're doing a joint paper with them because I keep saying we have part-time students. The majority of community college students are part-time. We can't build a completion challenge just on full-time. It won't be possible, but with Summer Pell, with taking one extra class in winter, with a change in our scheduling, and I think these are the kinds of things that the system should look at, and locally we need to look at. We need our schedules to follow the students. They have followed the colleges, not the students, and that's not easy to change. I remember even changing parking in my career as a community college president. I wanted the students to park closest to the building. Well, that was a huge challenge. But it really is having to be student-centered. So we know the data in the completion challenge, and this is what we want to see. And then the bigger challenge, third biggest one, is preparedness. And this is where I was talking to Chancellor Baker last night, where the kinds of partnerships with high schools can really make a difference in English and math. Not to say that science and history aren't important, they're critical, but can we connect the faculty so there aren't gaps in the basic skills when students are prepared? And there are models where different communities have brought together the teachers in the high school with the English faculty in the community college to say, this is the outcome for freshman composition. This is where our students are starting. We need to fill this gap between high school graduation in English and college entrance. And that's the preparedness challenge. But frankly, and this is why I love a number of the Promise programs that are starting at birth. They're starting to say, in elementary school, we need to make sure that students are not behind in their academics because they haven't had nutrition in the first 5 to 10 years of their life, or they haven't had the right early learning or childcare support. So in Oakland, for example, they have built their Oakland Promise in California around something that starts with brilliant babies. What will it take to really have healthy babies that aren't behind in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade? They get to be 8th grade. The gap is even bigger. Then community colleges are catching up. And we've got to figure this out, which I think we have to go vertically and horizontally to do it. The other part of this in terms of preparedness is our achievement gap. And, we have gaps. If I look back on preparedness, and we have more than 325 million Americans in the country. And if you take out the young people, we have probably plus or minus 200 million adults. And almost half of the adults are not reading, writing, doing math at the high school level, much less the college level. So I look at Promise and I say we also need to think about an intergenerational approach where we're educating youth and adults at the same time. And we are not going to close this achievement gap, which you well know, and I can give you the statistics, but we have way too many students not completing college because they come, if you look at it by income, if you look at it by race, if you look at it by ethnicity, we have the gaps, and we have got to change this. And the way we're going to change this is by educating children and their parents at the same time. We're going to get the adults back in, and we're going to do a much better job from at least high school through community college. You know, if I were a president back again, that's where I'd be focusing to really get that streamlined English and math. And I'd also provide those immersion, those language immersion programs and other kinds of things that you do in adult ed. That's another disconnect where everything has become siloed in the past 20, 30, 40 years, and we haven't connected the curriculum in the way we need to. So we know that preparation is key to earning a college degree. We know we have to do a much better job in remediation. And if we do all of these kinds of things with all the pathways work that is going on, I think we will see much better outcomes. We are already seeing double the outcomes just by changing the assessment systems, by reforming the remediation systems, by doing, having more intentional pathways from high school to college that maybe in the 60s we just said students will fend for themselves, but those intentional pathways are so critically important to help us make the value proposition. So I show these couple of slides. I want to make sure I stay on time for Dr. Chambers. So this slide is one of my favorite slides if people want to talk about money. And I say money is only one part, a very important part, but only one of many parts to this college promise. So this chart lays out, and thanks to the College Board and Sandy Baum, a value proposition for earnings. You will earn more if you go beyond high school, and if you draw a line, you will see the line going up the more education you get. So that's the value proposition case for getting an education if you're concerned about money. And I also say, I love that slide because these people also pay taxes, and taxes drive your local economies and your state economies. So the more education you can give students, the more successful, the more prosperous the community will be. But I also have a slide which you can have, which is talking about the other parts of the value proposition. I used to be, when I was a teacher in high school, also a deputy probation officer, and that was a lot of fun. And one of the things that troubled me when I was working with a judge out in California, when I was a president, my dream was to do a bunch of studies because it was costing us in California $60,000 a year to put a young person in the youth authority system, in the justice system. And it's even more, anywhere between $60,000 to $100,000 per person per year to warehouse people that if we looked backwards, maybe we could have gotten 20, 30% of them not to go into a life of crime, but to get an education early on, and a pretty good education, so that we could move them along the trajectories that I talked about. So we know that community colleges, graduates from college will be 5 times less likely to end up in jail or in prison. So even that alone, we are saving money. Community college graduates are healthier. They will use less government services. So if you want to make a case for the value proposition, we need to look at health, happiness, crime, other kinds of things in addition to money. And employment, of course, is a huge, huge value add. So I hope these slides at least are the beginning of making an ROI case where you talk to people to say, we need to do more, we need to increase our investments, we want to have a foundation that is asking the community to come on board and really help us with this. So I will get to now just why we are doing the College Promise movement to pull things together. I've said that 100 years ago, high school was an accepted norm. In fact, 1923 was the date that Alaska finally got high school for everyone, and that made a national movement. What's a promise? It's something you keep. It's a 21st century promise to the people in your community that we are going to help students go beyond high school. And it's a commitment that understands every student will be hardworking. That's our goal. We want to put a work ethic into this. And it's a commitment that we at community colleges are going to redesign our interventions and our incentives and our funding streams so that they are going to be there to keep that promise for every student. The features of a promise, They happen locally. They happen in a city. They're now growing. We have over 200 in the country, in towns and cities around the country. And we had Tennessee, we have 16 states that have moved forward on a promise. They guarantee support. They ask students to earn that promise by being performance-based. They're financially sustainable, or that's their goal, so they're putting these dollars into an irrevocable trust or into an endowment, so they're restricted for scholarships. They're saving for rainy days. They're using interest. They're growing the money. They're not just in and out on the money. And they depend on multiple partners: government, business, education, philanthropy, labor, nonprofits, students. In most of the Promise programs around the country, there are multiple participants and leaders in different sectors. The movement itself is really building aspirations, and it's also leveraging, as I said, the kinds of funding and the kinds of to-dos that are the right things to do in community colleges. So when I look across, Tennessee Promise, if you look back in its history, it started in 2005 in Knoxville. And so it took a long time for what we now take for granted as the Tennessee Promise. That's the Youth to College program for the state. They also have an adult promise called Tennessee Reconnect. Nearby in Jacksonville, Florida State College initiated a promise for all of their public high school graduates in Nassau and Duval counties. And they started this year. We pretty much, Matt and I, get a promise program every week. Somebody calls us and says, we're doing it, we're doing a pilot program, we're starting small, or we're doing it for all of our students, or we're doing it for low-income students. Those are the kinds of decisions that every institution is making. This one was a last dollar program. It was going to fill the gap that isn't filled with Pell Grants, so students often don't have enough money for textbooks, food, housing, all the other parts of a college education. And in this one, they've said you at least have to have a minimum 2.0 GPA. So we're about, in the campaign, building widespread support, increasing college access, bringing the promise. You'll see this nice slide of Lone Star Community College in Houston that's had their promise now for a few years. Steve Head is the president there. And what we're seeing across the country also is, because this is resonating so much with local communities, politicians are really flocking to this. And so with that, I worry, I think, having been in government for 5 years, but having been in community colleges for more than 35, will politicians do the right thing? Will they help local campuses build the kind of support systems to make these promises work? So we've got a great map. I don't know if I can actually go back. I guess it didn't come out here. This map shows where we have full statewide promises and local promises burgeoning around, and you can go to our map at collegepromise.org and take a deeper look. You can click on any state, and you can see, Muscle Shoals in there, and the other college promise programs. And this is what's happening with state legislation. So we're seeing, 30, 40 different kinds of bills going in state legislation, which is why it's so important for the presidents who are here to make the case about eligibility requirements, persistence requirements. Don't just do a promise off the top. So we have better and worse promise programs around the country. Our goal is to make every promise program strong. And the types of expenses, these are the goals. We want to increase college access. Let me just see what I think these things went wrong here in program design. Increase graduation rate, close the achievement gaps, like I've said, give every student the kinds of advising and counseling that they need, and the list goes on of all the things we want to do in Promise. But we also have people saying, not everybody needs to go. Well, take out those slides that show the trajectory, to show the value proposition. And it's very important to talk the language of Promise to say, do you want an educated community? Do you want less violence? Do you want more support? Do you want healthier people in our community? Do you want to be more efficient? So with the design features, we have lots of promise programs that are covering full tuition, they're covering other fees, transportation, like I mentioned, books. Some just have non-restricted funding. It's a grant on top of the Pell Grant or on top of other state aid. The idea is we want students to take less loans. If they want to go on to University of Alabama, let them take a smaller loan to finish at a more expensive university. But we want them to go on, and we want to do our part. There's a list of all the ways that promises are funded, multiple funding sources, a lot of creativity, whether it's government funded locally, whether it's philanthropy funded, whether it's a combination. I say to people, I'm looking for 53 billionaires. I can do this thing if I can just, and they'll still be the richest people in the world. And they don't have to give up all their billions, just a tiny portion, and they will still make money. So some of the promises are privately funded. Some of them, most of them are publicly and privately funded together, where business leaders have really stepped up to help. The early outcomes, we're seeing significant enrollment and persistence increases. We're seeing aspirations booming. We're seeing reduction in loans that students have to take. And we're seeing tremendous growth really in the last 2 years, 2.5 years since we started the campaign. It's really, really boomed. And it's because different sectors are paying attention and becoming local leadership teams. And it's because the colleges are doing the right things from all the way from, Oakland, California, that I said, all the way to, Florida, Boston, you name it. So there's a lot to learn from. And I'm going to ask Matt Caffrey to come up and just do the last couple of slides. They're right up here, Matt. So you can kind of get to know Matt, because we have 2 people. There's only 6 of us in the campaign, including me. And Matt oversees outreach and engagement in local communities, and he did a great talk this morning on how to build coalitions. So I'd like Matt to just come up and tell you what some of the next steps are, and tell you how fortunate we feel to be here with you, that there's interest in Alabama, there's interest in local communities, and we can't do anything more important than getting a more educated country. That is really why we're here. So Matt, why don't I turn this to you?
Thank you, Martha. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I grew up here in Montgomery, born in Jackson Hospital, went to Booker T. Washington Magnet High School, not too far from here. So it's really wonderful to be home. And so we are going to talk a little bit more about, okay, so this all sounds good. We've talked about return on investment. We've talked about all the challenges our students and communities are facing and how these programs can help make a difference for them. But now what? And so the first thing to emphasize is that we are here to help. We work with local communities all across the country. We can connect you to a massive network of policymakers, researchers, practitioners around the country who are doing this work, who have experience that you all can learn from. So if your college or your community is interested in moving forward, we can find somebody who has been there before to sort of walk with you down that path. We also can help engage your local coalition, your local community. So if there are these leaders in your community that you want to connect with, we probably can't go and have all of the meetings and bring them on board, but once you have a group of people together, we're more than happy to, I can Skype in, or we can even perhaps arrange a trip down, or importantly, we could have a member of our network, somebody come down from Tennessee to talk about the Tennessee Promise and the huge difference it's making there, or from some of these communities that have moved forward. So we can support you there. We also have digital and earned media resources that we can bring to bear. So we have a relationship Martha mentioned with Forbes.com to publish stories there, which has been really wonderful. But we have other resources as well. We did an op-ed in Arkansas to support the movement there to create a college promise program for Arkansas. We could do something similar in a local paper with you all. And then last, we can just provide research, advice, and support. We want to be your coach or your mentor if that's what you're looking for. But we can provide more tangible help as well. And so how do you connect to that? We'll talk about it in just a second. Ultimately, we pay for what we value, as Martha said at the beginning of her talk. If we care about changing people's path, we heard a really great presentation at a conference on these programs a couple of weeks ago. It's not just about beating the odds, it's about changing the odds. It's not enough that there are some incredible students who can run the gauntlet. Let's take down some of the hurdles. And so if we care about that, if we want to have communities where employers can expand because they have the workforce they need, then we have to bring together the right pieces, and we have to build these programs that will advance the economic, social, and sort of civic well-being of all of our communities. So how do we actually get involved? Well, the first thing that you can all do, even from your phones, is you can go to collegepromise.org/start. You fill out that form, and we can then connect with you directly, set up a call, and we'd be able to help. You can also just join our grassroots email list. You can donate to the campaign if you are so moved. And then my personal contact information is on here as well as our policy lead and Deputy Director, Angela Kamak, who can help answer some of the more technical questions that you might have. So this is how you get started. This is how you can connect with us. We're here to help, and we really appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Matt. So I just want to close up by saying something I didn't say at the beginning that I probably should have. Our campaign is bipartisan, and it's chaired by Dr. Biden, who is a community college professor at Northern Virginia Community College, and Governor Jim Geringer. He was the successful 8-year governor for the state of Wyoming. He lives in Wyoming. He's come to every one of our meetings. The fantastic bipartisanship that they've shown in the first couple of years, they've committed for the next few years. Governor Geringer also chairs the Complete College America effort that's going to be going down here in New Orleans right after Thanksgiving. If you can send someone to that, I think you'll it's a state-focused, it's not as locally focused as we're doing really local and state, but predominantly local because we have 200 communities now that we've identified, and we think we'll probably be up around 300 in another year and a half. And you can also see our board members. We have Republicans and Democrats and Tea Party folks. We've got all kinds of people on our governing board. And the reason they want to participate on this advisory board is because they understand the importance of creating a better educated country. A generation ago, we were first in the world. We're way behind. We have a lot of catch up to do if you look at us internationally, if you look at us nationally, if you look at us state by state. And Dr. Katsinas keeps showing me data on the state disinvestment here in Alabama compared to other states. And we are in the situation we're in because we need to keep making the case that we are going to deliver the outcomes that we are going to need. And I think the state wants to see better performance. The state wants to see those high standards met. I was a state bureaucrat for 5 years, and I love that work because it's a different kind of work that we do on the ground in the community colleges, but frankly, it's a partnership with everyone, with the K-12 system, with the early learning folks, with the high school folks, with the system of community colleges that you have at the state level, with the university system, with business, education, government, and the foundations. I was asking, where are the foundations in Alabama? Can they start with some pilot testing? California really did a smart thing. They gave out pilot testing grants for Promise, and then they looked at where the momentum and where the designs really were yielding the highest outcomes, the best outcomes that we want for our students. So let me end here, and let me thank Dr. Chambers for bringing us all here to share this information with you. As Matt said, we're available. We're kind of 24/7 types. And we also invite you to come visit us when you come to Washington, D.C. for something or another. And I know our board members would be happy also to talk with any number of business leaders or other sectors, mayors. We've got a whole lot of mayors working on this. I think the latest one is Louisville and West Sacramento and all over the country. So thank you again for having us, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Chambers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Cantor and Matt, for that thought-provoking presentation. We surely appreciate your commitment to community colleges, especially here in Alabama, and your campaign to College Promise. On behalf of the Alabama Community College Association and the Alabama Community College System, we would like to thank you for your presentation and present you with a small token of our appreciation. This is for you. Thank you so much. Thank you. The ACCA Executive Committee has scheduled some great activities for you during the conference. To cover some information to help you get the most out of the conference, I will ask Dr. Perry to come to the podium and give you a conference overview and make a few announcements. I will ask that Dr. Perry dismiss us upon completion of the announcements and hope that each of you enjoy your conference and have a great day. Thank you.
Good morning. Many of the announcements I will be making are referred to on page 5 and 6 in your conference program. Please review those pages when you have the opportunity, as they will offer you additional details. Excuse me. Your name badge is your ticket for the conference meals and refreshment breaks. Please wear your badge throughout the conference. Vegetarian meals tickets will be available for the luncheon. Your ambassadors will disseminate the meal cards as you enter into the exhibit halls. Door prize winners will be announced during each general session. If you see your name displayed on the screen, please pick up your door prize at the registration desk during the normal registration hours. You must show your badge in order to claim your prize. We will once again having the social media contest during the conference. Please post to Facebook, send a tweet via Twitter, or upload a photo on Instagram using hashtag ACCA17. The best post, tweet, and photo will be awarded a prize. If you haven't searched for the conference app, please do so by visiting cumulusapp.com. Please use event key ACCA 2017. After each work session, you will have an opportunity to evaluate the sessions. All evaluations will be done electronically this year using the QR code on your name tag. Instructions for the evaluation process are on page 6 of your conference program and will be explained in each concurrent session. The Vendor Expo is the center of all activities for this year's conference. In addition to 50 vendors' booths, we will have a charging station furnished by the Alabama Technology Network, professional headshots made by Shelton State Community College, with hair and makeup assistance by salon management students from Belleville State Community College, massage therapy demonstration by students from Northeast Alabama Community College, and blood pressure check by nursing students from Lawson State Community College. Needless to say, we have several engaging and entertaining activities for this year. If you need any assistance, please call on our student ambassadors from Calhoun Community College or members of the ACCA committee. Photos of the committee members appear on the last 2 pages of the conference program. Also, please check with the registration desk if you so happen to have lost or found any items during the normal registration period. We would like to thank you for being with us here today and enjoy the rest of the conference.